Hey, World Builders, welcome back to Shoutout Saturday, where I read your lore. This is Shoutout Saturday number 15. If you want to hear your own writing read aloud here, come submit some for the daily prompt in the Discord and tag it for Shoutout Saturday, and then it'll get read here. Now let's read some lore. For day 174, the prompt was, what is an odd leisure activity in your world, i.e., a barbecue, a game night, going to a bar, etc.? Probably the Great writes, games fit for a king. The Eternians, infinite, uncaring, omnipotent, and very, very bored. To enjoy themselves, Eternians do all sorts of things. More intimate activities are both impossible and alien to them, so the only fun activities they have are based largely around either gambling or intellectual adventures like board games. The former is much more enjoyable to them than the latter, and so they've created a very fun game based around their omniscient vision. The subject? Who's about to die? The Eternian's ability to see everything all at once allows them to spy on their orcish forces constantly, and, if they're bored, place bets on which orc will die first. Eternians don't use currency in their bets, instead transferring power between one another like currency, or by offering favors. Eternians get very emotional when their orc loses, sometimes decimating a room or two in their citadel out of anger before composing themselves. Eternians, I believe, Predwin said, are his BBEG, like the worst of the worst in the setting. It's interesting. I don't know much about them yet. So I'm excited to learn more as we do more Shadow Saturdays and I read more of his stuff in the Discord. Nugget posts The Church of the Frenzied. This is an entry in Petrichor. It's believed that an altered perception of reality is a result of possession by the frenzied, as it allows you the privilege of seeing the world through its eyes. Mental illness, which produces hallucinations, are rare gifts given to only its favorite humans, but not all of its followers can be so lucky. It is a common leisure, almost religious activity for affiliates of the frenzied to partake in various mind altering substances and drugs to invoke a similar sense of possession by the frenzied. Common drugs are alcohol, marijuana, and shrooms, although many still prefer harder substances. The less in touch with reality you are, the more the frenzied cradles you in its arms, so they say, anyway. This sounds like what is the eye thing from Elden Ring? It's giving a similar idea. The madness entity in Elden Ring, and this gives me a similar idea, maybe without all the yellow lightning, though. For day 175, the prompt was, what grand construct exists in your world and what is its purpose? This comes from Aris in the Discord, and he also has a TikTok. Aris, the Five Towers of Transience, or the Void. The Five Towers of Transience is a bundle of constructs within the lower abyssal sequence of Sakar, specifically in the Fields of Dethroned Gods, appearing as five massive, jagged towers rocketing into the sky. Each tower is placed around each other in a circular pattern, with two being the shortest, two being larger, and one taller than the rest. In the center of the circle of towers is a void focus, keeping the area active while shooting a bright purple beacon up into the sky. These towers were built in honor of five gods. Both the gods and the towers were then consumed by the void after it got curious. Each tower has a different appearance to it. The front left tower is the Tower of Light. It has a white and yellow coloring to it with a rounded design. On each level of this tower, balconies can be seen overlooking the area, with the topmost balcony connecting to the front right tower, the Tower of Shadow. The Tower of Shadow has a more ghastly appearance. Its walls aren't even, and the tower seems twisted and morphed. Getting near it will snuff most, if not all, light sources. The center towers are the second largest of the bunch. The center left is the Tower of Death. It has a jagged appearance, each level bearing massive spikes and horns that bend upwards and away from the building. The topmost area of the tower has a spire, bearing the corpse of a felled god's bones. The center right is the Tower of Life. It is hexagonal in design, with each level being uncentered to form its balconies. Surrounding each level is a spell circle that shifts and sways endlessly. The bottommost circle glows a bright white color, while the topmost circle is a dark purple, and is by far the largest spell circle there. The tops of these two towers are also connected to each other. Finally, there is the largest tower, being nearly double the size of the center towers. This is the Tower of Twilight. This tower is built up of a collection of diamond-shaped rooms, all of which hover around each other, connecting and disconnecting at random. All of these towers contain various creatures controlled by their paradox. The paradox of death, life, and light all wish to shove the field deeper into the void, while the paradox of shadow wishes to raise it up higher to potentially escape. The paradox of twilight simply wishes to destroy the field, and with it themselves, hoping that they would stop the endless cycles. Though, as they can't do much about it at this time, they simply lie and wait for the right opportunity to strike. Man, it's hard even to know what to say about this one. Aris, this just seems like really, really big cosmic level building stuff. Seems really interesting to me. I don't have much context as per usual with your stuff. Like little pieces coming together over time, but it's going to take me a while still. Pedwin the Great writes Interloper 1, The Nexus. This is a different world for Pedwin the Great than Rust and Blood, called Guild. Aether, NIB. Banishment Ritual. Upon manifestation and discovery of Interloper 1, a team of 20 or more armed collaboratives, consisting of no more than 2 scribes, no less than 6 weavers, and no more than 4 vanguards, are to be immediately sent to unearth the correct threat of the Nexus. If risks are discovered to be above Orichalcum tier, the collaboratives are to immediately enact the following ritual. The Nexus is to be appeased by completing various trials on each floor. The information specifically regarding trials and that of the Nexus itself are difficult to archive properly, as both written information and memories of said information become foggy or outright lost as the scribe descends the Nexus. Collaborator teams are to be trained to the requisites as written in the Nexus C&E grimoire as to properly appease the Nexus for proper information gathering. Under no circumstance should undertrained collaborators be sent into the Nexus as to avoid adamantine tier danger. Upon completion of the Nexus trials, all Rift touched are to make sizable efforts to escape before Rift closure. Losses are acceptable, failure is not. As mentioned previously, each floor has a trial that must be completed to ascend to the next floor of the tower. These trials cannot be fully documented in either form or function, as all written notes and memories regarding such information is almost completely erased from pages and minds alike. However, any documentation originating from within the Nexus distinctly lacks this decaying property. All information from the bookshelves in the Nexus collected by collaboratives are to be compiled amid delve by the team's scribes for archival upon return. Appearance. Interloper 1. The Nexus appears to be a 20-story tall stone tower vaguely shaped like a greatsword. The stone of the tower is comprised of mundane limestone and similarly boring oak wood supports and flooring. The interior of the Nexus often does not match that of the outside, often being noticeably shorter or taller than the outer appearance would suggest, with some floors within the tower extending great distances not possible given the tower's outer dimensions both vertically and horizontally. The inside of the tower is often littered with what can only be described as treasure, used by the Nexus to coax collaboratives deeper inside. Along with the aforementioned treasure within the Nexus, there are always at least 3 bookshelves containing information crucial to Guild's efforts in protecting Gythus. The uppermost floor of the tower has, thus far, remained the same over the course of all manifestations of Interloper 1. This floor is also referred to as the Crown. The Crown is, according to the only allowed measurements of the Nexus, a 20 by 20-foot square platform suspended above an endless sea of black fluid not visible from ground level. In the center of the platform there is a large open book positioned on a lectern. This tome is believed to be the mind of the Nexus, as upon its closure, the rift associated with the tower will begin collapsing rapidly. As it breaks down, the stem connecting it to Gythus now severed, the inky void of black liquid begins seeping through the descending floors of the Nexus. Any collaborators that make contact with the liquid are inflicted with extremely painful necrotic rashes that overtake their body in seconds and leave them writhing in agony for minutes. 1,000 infinities take a deep breath and exhale destruction. I'm excited to learn more about this guild setting. I think this is really interesting. A very different direction than Rust and Blood. I like this so far, probably with a grade. I think you got something good that you're cooking up. Nugget writes The Grand Arc Cathedral, an entry in Petrichor. Even with the chronic downpour and usual fog restricting visibility, it's hard to miss the main church. The tallest point in the entire city by a considerable margin, the Grand Arc Cathedral towers over the entirety of Petrichor, and with lights always being in the windows, it's clearly visible no matter where you are. Regardless of whether you're a high roller or living in the slums, you will always be able to look up and see the cathedral. Walking up the stairs and heavy gates, you already feel a sense of dread as you approach. Looking up, you see the details carved into the very stone walls making up the building staring directly back at you even without eyes. No wonder you feel so watched. And so small, too. Next to the gods, incomprehensible and Lovecraftian in nature, you are nothing, and the cathedral does well to make sure you feel as such. Walking inside does little to help your sense of vertigo. You look up at the ceiling, resting several stories above you with ornate paintings depicting unfamiliar scenes, held up with giant stone pillars. Lining the walls are artificial waterfalls and stained glass windows with similar artistic and religious imagery, casting colorful light onto the cold marble floors below you. Walking further in, the smell of incense fills your nose along with the scent of something strangely metallic that makes you feel slightly sick. The hall is lined with benches, some people already sitting in quiet prayer. You are guided to the end of the hall where you stare up at 4 giant statues depicting strangely ethereal and cloaked figures with various masks and odd limbs, crying and weeping towards the sky in agony and grief as water pours around them. The gods, you assume. After all, it's those tears that cause the rain. Somewhere above you was where the council meets to discuss new ways to ignore the Third Estate, and even higher was where the church heads spent most of their time. When was the last time they were seen in public? And why aren't they doing anything about the council? It seems even the church is prone to ignoring the problems of the people they're meant to govern by locking themselves safely away where they cannot see. There is a truly stunning circular stained glass window taking up most of the far wall, framing the entire cathedral in strange light. You take a moment to stand there, closing your eyes and taking in the feeling of the display being projected on your face. You hear the bell tower ringing the hour ominously from somewhere else in the cathedral, piercing the entire city with their toll. You open your eyes and rest them on the source of that metallic smell from earlier. The prayer altar underneath the stained glass, between the stone depictions of the gods, complete with various symbols and trinkets associated with each, in the center of which was a simple and elegant fountain basin dispensing what was unmistakably blood. Whose blood is unknown. You know part of the process of swearing into the council or taking over as a church head involves slicing your hand and pouring the blood into the basin, likely as a show of dedication to the gods. But there's far too much inside of the basin to only be from that. Even if it was from only the nobles, it isn't enough to make up for what they've done. A revolution is on the horizon.
The blood of the aristocracy will overflow the basin, and when it does, Petrichor will gladly partake in communion.
Nugget, you did a really good job evoking like the imagery of this cathedral and this place. I felt like I was there. This is maybe some of the best general description of an environment we've had so far. I felt like this was really solid. For day 176, the prompt was describe the government of a specific city or nation where power is highly imbalanced. Probably the Great writes the power of the people, and this is an entry in Rust and Blood, which is most of what we've seen before. Caldatha needs soldiers. Most of those soldiers came from the Watchers Peninsula, until less than a quarter ago. The Watchers Peninsula, for the longest time, was governed by a man completely devoted to the Caldethi royalty. This man was Aurora Thar of House Damar, and until his death, the peninsula yielded to the demands of its king. Three-fourths of all soldiers were drafted from the peninsula, and two-thirds of those men and women died in their first week on the war front. For decades, countless thousands had been taken from picket fences to barbed wire and rot. All until 36 days ago, after Aurora's son, Amar, took control of the peninsula following his father's death. Although Aurora had died several years ago, Amar made careful preparations for his declaration of sovereignty. Amar's actions completely halted the stream of troops to the beach of bodies. He had planned for Caldatha to attempt negotiations, which he would have made great strides towards, but instead, a coward took an opportunity to destroy all the efforts of Caldatha over the course of the war. General Orthus Illerwin, who was mentioned in Build Together Day 146, in his corrupt allegiance with the forces of death, used his position of power to divert forces meant for the bulkhead to correct the actions of the peninsula. Illerwin's actions, disguised as helping Kamar with a short term engagement against the peninsula, allowed the forces of death to overrun and destroy the bulkhead, Kamar's most important line of defense. With the bulkhead gone, Murricanians, Orcs, and Korgans all marched into the lower state of Caldatha and completely took over the region. Hundreds of thousands died from miasmic corruption, all because one man wanted to save his citizens from pointless deaths.
Kindness is never, ever rewarded, mortal.
Nugget writes The government structure of Petrichor, an entry in Petrichor. Petrichor's government is a combination of an oligarchy and a theocracy. The church heads are the highest position of power in Petrichor, being in charge of the entire church. They work similar to the Pope, only there's four of them, one for each god. Theoretically, any member of the clergy could become a church head if one needs to be replaced, although since the decision of who takes over is made by high-ranking members of the church personally chosen by said church heads, it's usually going to be one of them. Additionally, the church heads could veto the choice if half or more of them agree. The responsibilities of the church heads mostly lie in the clergy. They promote ideals held by their gods, provide spiritual guidance, and oversee the happenings of the church. It's also they who have the most power in terms of what happens within the city. They're the ones that decide what laws or changes need to be made before handing it off to the council, and then later decide if they want to use what the council decided. They are the only ones with power over the council, the only people they'd fear, but yet they often do nothing to prevent their actions. The council is the other major power in Petrichor, second only to the church heads. It is composed of the heads of a number of noble families. The house head is the member tasked with representing their entire family, and as such is always referred to by last name in formal settings. The title of house head is passed down by seniority, with a minimum age of 18, and while not required, they often receive heavy education on political sciences and economics. It's the council's responsibility to discuss business, politics, and law, usually based on the instructions given by the church heads. Nobles are aristocratic families not associated with the church, but given a noble title by the church heads. Every council member is a noble, but not all nobles are council members. Every noble is an aristocrat, but not every aristocrat is a noble. Only the council has direct influence over politics, but most members of the second estate rub elbows with one another, so it isn't uncommon for general aristocracy to still have a lot of say over the political structure of the city. Additionally, petrichor is divided up into three estates. The clergy is the first estate, the aristocracy is the second estate, and everybody else is part of the third estate. Only the first and second estate have any weight in the government. The third estate, despite making up 95% of petrichor's population, have zero say in what happens to them. No wonder the people are becoming angry. Well, this is great, Nugget. I feel like I finally have a little bit more context for when you say things about the different estates. That's going to help me out a lot in reading in the future. I mean, not necessarily with reading, but with some understanding of what it is that you're writing about. Awesome. For day 177, the prompt was, "What are everyday adhesives like? Slash, how are they made? Glue, tape, etc." This was from Nukes in the Discord. Carhop writes, Endora's adhesive. Of the many applications the resourceful people of Restris have found for the multitudinous fungi inhabiting their world, Endora's adhesive may just be the most commonly used. Made by mixing the melted resin of specified trees with animal fat, charcoal, and beard lichen, the stuff has a staunch odor of burnt meat and smoked herbs, but has tremendous staying power, flexibility, and is naturally hydrophobic. Its applications are numerous, including fletching, seam sealing, cobbling, ship repairing, construction, and so on. Protections against fire do need to be made when handling the adhesive, as it is highly flammable and produces long lasting flames. Due to this property, many adventurers keep a chunk of the adhesive in their packs to be used as a fire starter or emergency torch. The adhesive derives its nickname shroom goo from the trees which produce the resin and charcoal used in its creation. Though most any resin can be turned into a sort of adhesive, Endorus adhesive is made specifically from trees which share a symbiotic relationship with endophytic fungi that bloom into saprophytic fruiting bodies once resin begins to be produced. The most notable species of tree and fungi which share this relationship are pitchbark pines and the bloodwort fungus. In the tradition of the Verlunde Urush, the tree's resin and the fungus's crimson guttation droplets are collected before the wood and mushrooms are turned into charcoal in earthen mounds. Great care is taken by the wild elves to leave enough of the pine and fungus to grow back without depleting the forest. Unfortunately, the same arboreal care cannot be attributed to some of the pioneers and industrialists in the Orowacho territory who seem intent on stripping the land near barren. This has caused much conflict between local Urush and the frontier town of Sidrasta. This is definitely the most unique submission Carhop we got for this prompt. I like this one a lot. This is super cool. Clearly, you know a lot more about fungus than the rest of us in the server, I think, which is awesome. I am curious about some of these words. I might have to go and do some research or something on my own time to maybe understand a little bit more of what's going on, but I like it. For day 178, the prompt was, "What is a common grift that most people know in your world, but is still lucrative?" Probably the Great writes, "Dead men walking." War changes. It is not a stagnant, sessile thing that refuses to adapt. The moment the children of Ragash arrived on Kamar, one of the stakes in life's coffin was driven deep. With the Murricanians on the war front, compassion gets people killed, and dead people multiply like bacteria. The dead men. Zombies, ghouls, sundered, whatever you call them, they all start as one kind of foe, the dead men. Dead men are those unfortunate enough to be wounded in war, left in no man's land to bleed out slowly, if they're lucky. No, more often a fate is to be inflicted with the miasma and be forced with a decision, to serve or to resist. Do you join the children of Ragash willingly, or resist the pull of the writhing mountain until your mind is consumed? Most soldiers choose the latter, to die with their dignity intact and finally rest. They will not rest. They will never sleep again. The dead men are soldiers who have recently become undead by refusing the call of Ragash. They walk like man, cry for help like man, and hold weapons like man. They look like man or elf or dwarf, but they are husks, shambling towards their bunkers, calling out for help, asking their fellow soldiers to lift them and bring them to safety. "Please, it's Arthur, it's me, help!" Lies, concocted by an eldritch intelligence that wants to see the world burn. They do not falter as warning shots land near their feet, nor slow down as dozens of flashlights shine on them in the night. You have to see past their lies. You are responsible for keeping the sleeping safe. You need to shoot this man before you can see if he's even remotely wounded. It isn't a risk worth taking. It isn't worth it. It isn't worth it. Posters with this message above a picture of a wounded man are commonly found in Caldatha bunker complexes. Propaganda to guide soldiers into making the right choice and gunning down their fellows that travel alone in the night. Wounded people, people asking for help in this cruel, dark place. Will you really shoot her? She sounds so scared, so real. No magics could truly replicate a person so perfectly, could they? If you just let her get close enough to inspect to see if she lets off purple fumes, then you could be certain. You wouldn't kill an innocent person, someone who needs help. They need your help. Show some kindness. She gets closer, 4 arm lengths away now, and you turn on your flashlight. You look at her, terror in your eyes. Her eyes are cold, foggy. Her breath comes out as a dense purple haze and her lips are bitten off. She stares at you, and without moving her mouth in the slightest, asks for help one last time. Kindness is weakness. Kindness is never, ever rewarded. Very spooky, Predwin. You're getting this eldritch stuff down really well. This last paragraph confused me a little bit, but I think I read it weird. I'm gonna read it back to myself at some point and try and properly parse when we start describing this event to ourselves. But I thought this was really interesting. I think you did a really good job, as usual, with the eldritch aspect of this coming through really well. Nugget writes, Edward and Thaddeus's schemes. An entry in Petrichor. Some years back, you may have found yourself walking around after some afternoon shopping and see a young street musician playing the violin. He couldn't be any older than 15, you'd wager, but his talent was far beyond his age. You found yourself stuck there, losing track of time, entranced by the boy's singing. You put some spare coins in his violin case, and he gives you a grateful nod before you walk away, and it's only when you're out of earshot you realize that your pockets are far lighter than they should be. After the orphanage flooded, see day 166, Thaddeus and Edward ran away, deciding they were better off on their own rather than waiting for help that would never show. At first they simply begged for food and scraps, being young and pathetic enough that people were inclined to help them. But as years went on, this became less reliable, so they began actively scamming people. They had many schemes to scrounge money and food, so no one thing was too overdone to raise suspicion. However, one of their thought out ones came from Edward's magic continuing to develop in his voice. Realizing this could be of help, he began learning hypnotism and working it into his songs. From there, he performed on the streets, usually in wealthier neighborhoods to screw the rich, and put them in a state where they're so enraptured with him, Thaddeus could walk between the crowd to pickpocket them, with no one being any the wiser. Of course, this scam is no longer relevant, seeing as Edward has since married into a noble family and has no need to scam people to afford food, and Thaddeus similarly now works at a local bar. Although that being said, be careful about how much you say. The bartender's always listening in, and you never know what he'll do with the information you give while drunk. For day 179, the prompt was, what's an example of a deity or powerful creature dying in your world? What events were caused by this passing? And this one comes from MycoMan in Discord and on TikTok. Pedro the Great writes, decaying, dying, writhing. The death of Nularod shook the world. A celestial, one of the 12 great ones, dead. There was no glorious bloodshed nor brutal maiming, only instant, permanent, uncaring blackness. Pieces of its mind scattered like seeds in the wind, landing mostly in the bombed out husk of Themistria, now known as Grilla. From there its carcass grew sentience, and knew only rage and hate. It pushed away all who came near it, sending forth the few creatures that survived the bombings conducted by the ancient Khazarah. In the south, fragments of its mind became the Eternals, who hunger for the power they previously wielded. They built armies of clone soldiers, the Orcs, and made vassals out of the Murricanians to find their shattered psyche and become whole once more. Nolorod's will spread prejudice throughout Remexia, infecting them with disgust and vanity, and its bleeding heart landed in Kamar, trying to mend itself by siphoning as much magic as it could from the area, leaving the continent's inhabitants void of the lifeblood of turmoil, the arcane. And so, still, in its death, Nolorod lives on as the source of everything, the source of turmoil. Nice. Okay, we got a little bit of a creation myth almost. Not, I guess not quite a creation myth, but close to it. The inception myth of your world, Predwin. For day 180, the prompt was, what's a unique way to form a promise or contract with someone in your world, i.e., a pinky promise that's legally binding? This comes from MycoMan in the Discord and on TikTok. Bubba the Great writes, packs with cats. Grala would not be the same without the Nyan caravans. These cat folk, wherever they're from, have made great strides to unite Grala in trade, but they don't do it for free. When the Nyan lord met with Sobrek, the two men agreed on a term most others would never even begin to consider. The Nyan, at their first meeting with the Kartoff, became an integral part of their entire society and joined the ranks of their highest officials. In merely a week, the people of Kartoff had to come to terms with the fact that decisions about their society will be influenced by people that came out of nowhere. For a time, the people of Havenhold, and by extension the Kartoff as a whole, were very cautious of these felines, but as time went on and on, these aren't the Kartoff and the Nyan, only a unified people. The Kartoff natives and the catfolk became one people, united in a world where kindness is weakness, and they made it strength. Well, this is wholesome, Predwin. That's nice. Carhop writes, Vow Weave. Though many Kori settlements lack a structured government, opting instead to make important decisions by communal committee, it has been a tradition among the diaspora to seal binding vows and promises by exchanging cords of dyed spider silk and interweave these into their own hair. This rite, known as a vow weave, is typically reserved for marriage ceremonies, religious pledges, and vows between battlekin. See notes on warfare in this article. The exchange is performed in front of four communally appointed leaders who call upon the magics of the four moons to seal these bonds. The blessing serves not to only create an arcane longevity in the braided silk cords, but also to punish any who break their vows, igniting an offender in moonfire which burns until no life remains in the body. A vow weave can only be undone by cutting the silk cords with a pair of opaline and obsidian shears bathed in mineral-rich springs, while runes of power are spoken over them by the elder representing the shattered brother. After use, these shears are consumed in moonfire. As such, the Kori view liars and cheats with high enmity and oft refrain from making pledges to outsiders even within the diaspora. Carp, I feel like you're really good at making really interesting or wacky rituals that sound like they're out of our own mythology, like here on Earth. It's really, really good. This is something I'm just not very good at. But my magic system is too hard of a magic system to make this work too often. But I need to do this kind of thing for more mythology of Atovia. This is good. I'm getting inspired. Nugget writes, sealed in blood, an entry in petrichor. Now repeat after me. The words of the decayed church head. It was Ambrose's 18th birthday, and the day he was sworn into the council in the absence of the rest of his family. He sat in the middle of the grand dark cathedral, directly in front of the sacred basin of blood of those who came before him and the small shot glass that he had used to drink a portion of it just moments ago. He could still feel the metallic taste burning his tongue. He was dressed in extremely ornate ceremonial clothing for the event, and he could feel the eyes of everyone in the room waiting for what comes next. He was just handed an equally ornate dagger, as he repeated line by line what the church head had told him. I, Ambrosia John Lockhart, do swear on my blood to dedicate my entire being to the church, to the gods, and to the people of Petrichor. From now until my death, I vow to uphold my name and house and use it to bring the city up higher. May my noble blood remember what time may forget. After he finished, he brought his hand over the basin and sliced his palm cleanly with the dagger, spilling and squeezing his blood into the basin below. Cheers rang out from the crowd welcoming the newest member of the council, and the church heads brought over a piece of paper, a contract. Ambrose took his still bloody hand and dragged it over the bottom of the page, covering his signature with crimson. While not always the case, many more serious contracts in Petrichor, such as being sworn into a high position of power, require being literally sealed in blood. It's unknown why this is the case, but perhaps it's fortunate no one has yet found out. Nice little combo piece of a bit of narrative and then a bit of just general exposition. Cool and gross. For our last submission of this Shoutout Saturday, we have MycoMan, who writes, it's almost my time. I'm sorry, but I'm getting too old for this now. My job is one that's needed, but my bones are frail. I've almost fully destroyed my legs, just to keep going. I can still see bone fragments, fading out of sight as I make them into energy to use. I'm a dried well, and I'm sorry. I'm leaving this note for Anorak. I hope he finds it first, and that he understands this had to be done. I have little power left, and I feel that the Dawn Guard have been helping too much. I could just tell I'm no longer supposed to live, James. Yes, I know your dead name. I'm granting the rest of my power to the Dawn Guard. I simply believe I've made enough realms that they could destroy a few without it being an issue. Some who learn shall miss home, yes, but they have to understand, don't they? This isn't an easy thing to do. Please, tell my children of my passing. Let them know their father isn't dying just because. Tell them how proud I am of them for learning to shape their own homes. My whole life, I've been focused on making more realms, helping gods learn to affect their own, and I never thought to see them before now. Give the ones you can a hug for me. Tell the Dawn Guard to not waste effort trying to make any new realms. I've made ones even you hadn't found yet, after all. Anyways, ta-ta, friend. P.S. We saw you in the beginning, even though you thought you were being sneaky. I'm holding this note still, even as I copy it into journal number 27 of my collection. I found it near his body, which I've handled for now. I'm worried of what might happen to him if he's left here in the outscape. I don't know what happens when a god passes. I hope wherever or whatever he's doing, he feels less stress. I'm unsure what to do with it, and only one or two thoughts come to mind, which are both rather dire. The Dawn Guard have already been informed of their increase in their capabilities. I'm meant to meet with them to discuss their plans in deciding which realms are worthy of using as ammunition, as they call it. I've arrived to the home of the Dawn Guard. They're so far in the outscape that I've seen a few realms I've never been to. Looks like old Ernie was right about ones I haven't discovered yet. I'm going to speak with them now. I hope to learn more about them as we commune. Well, I've learned there are only 10 Dawn Guard, one for each of Airnor's hands. They each have a staff, slightly unique in design. According to Goyam, the fourth hand, and one of three I actually saw within their abode, their staff is meant to represent what realm they hail from. Their bodies are rather interesting. It was explained to me that they gave up part of their soul when they gain Airnor as a patron. It changes them all to look rather similar, only differing in size based on their species. They all appear malnourished. They all have a mundane tone of gray for their skin. None of them have noses or ears, simply being replaced by holes that let them breathe and hear. Only one of the three I met had hair. They all wore the same robe, colored a deeper gray than their skin, fading to orange near the bottom. His favorite color. I've told them I have the body. They said they knew exactly where to put it and what should be done with it. I'll mention that when they spoke. They didn't appear to be in mourning. they were quite resolved. It seems that during the partial soul removing process, they also become closer to an automaton than a human. Strange. I've been wondering why these were the limits to Airnor's pact. Why did these need to be done? I asked Sormala, one of the two Dawn Guard yet to be mentioned thus far. She told me that the power they have is too great to be wielded by someone that's held back by emotions. I personally disagree. I also learned that they don't exactly consume power from Airnor to be a warlock for him, but they also do. A section of his power is given, letting them manipulate the realms to a certain extent. To cast powerful magic, they must destroy a realm in the process. It made me think of what spells would be considered powerful magic. Either way, although they can't grieve for him, I hope that these beings manage to do without him. I don't know if I swear I've heard about the Dawn Guard from you, Michael, before, but I hadn't heard anything really substantial at all. This is super interesting. I like that you've really leaned in at this point to Anorak's perspective. Before it was like you were writing and you were like, oh, okay, this is like what Anorak is doing, but now we've really leaned into like this is like his journal entries and stuff, what I think is super fun. I mean, you're writing a whole like narrative sequence, and like at some point you would have a book's worth of Anorak's workings, which I think would be super cool. That's the end of Shadow Saturday. This is number 15. If you want to see your own work here, as always, make sure that you come to the Discord, hang out with us. Lots of fun and cool world builders and people to hang out with and read some of the cool stuff that they're doing. Post your stuff, maybe they'll read it. If you want to see your work done here, then you just post a build together prompt from the daily prompt channel into the build together forum and tag it as Shoutout Saturday, and it will be read here out loud by me. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to. You can post it in build together forum and not tag it with Shoutout Saturday, and it will not be included. Only stuff that people have explicitly permitted me to read here, I read here. Otherwise, if you're interested in this sort of thing and you want to see more of this, or you want to support the channel or the community, then please subscribe or comment something, maybe some piece of your own work that is at all related to any of these prompts, or just share something cool about a world that you're working on. That's always super fun. But have a great Saturday or whatever day it is that you're watching this, and thank you so much. Goodbye.